Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this. 8 years ago, my sister got pregnant. The father wasn't involved and my sister didn't want the baby, but she also couldn't bring herself to terminate or adopt out to strangers. She approached me and my now ex-husband and asked if we would be willing to adopt her child. We weren't sure as we were concerned this would lead to issues down the line, but my sister insisted that it wouldn't, so we ultimately agreed. Before Lucy was a year old, my husband left us both because my sister lied about Lucy's father. When Lucy was 4, I got together with my wife, and we married last year. My sister has said that seeing me and my wife with Lucy, who is now 7, confirms to her that she made the right decision. When I first adopted Lucy, my husband and I told my sister that we wanted multiple children, which she said she was fine with at the time, but now my wife and I are looking into our options and my sister objects. My sister has been staying with us since July because her boyfriend kicked her out. She keeps asking Lucy if she's sure she wants siblings. Lucy has said that she does, and telling us she's worried we won't be able to give Lucy what she needs, and then today happened. We had an online consultation with a fertility clinic to talk about sperm donation. We told my sister about it and asked her to keep an eye on Lucy while we talked. The Wi-Fi went randomly on and off 3 times during the session, booting us out of the call each time. The 3rd time, my wife went to check it and saw my sister holding the power cord, and Lucy trying to plug it back in. Lucy saw my wife and said, "Auntie keeps turning the Wi-Fi off." Wife plugged it back in, but we could no longer get into the session, and we got an email from the doctor saying that if the Wi-Fi is going to be this bad, then maybe we should try a more local clinic, as we can't do online consultations. When we confronted my sister, she admitted that she wants Lucy to be an only child so she has 100% of our undivided attention, and then said in a sarcastic tone, "Forgive me for only wanting what's best for my daughter." To which we responded that Lucy isn't her daughter. Things escalated until I said that my sister should go stay with our parents, and my wife drove her to their place. Since leaving a few hours ago, she's apologized and begged to come back, and my parents have also asked me to take her back. But I've refused. They've all called me an arsehole for kicking my own sister out after one argument, because now she's unable to get to work. No car and too far to walk, and she's back in her childhood room while at our place she had a studio to herself behind the house. Since my wife and I got married 3 years ago, things have been off. I know that people grow and change with time, but around our wedding, my wife changed drastically. She bleached her dark brown hair blonde right before the ceremony. And I honestly thought I was in the wrong church for a split second when she came down the aisle. We moved into our house right after the honeymoon, and she went into full domestic mode. We'd shared cleaning duties before, but once we moved into the house, she became insistent on doing everything before I could even get to it. Since this is our first house, I thought it was some kind of homeowner nesting thing, but it never stopped. Her hair color is none of my business, and I think most people would be happy not to have to clean. So I honestly didn't really think much of either of those things at the time. The big thing has always been how closed off she got after the wedding. When we were dating, she'd tell me long rambling stories about her feelings and rant to me when she was upset and all that. And I liked hearing about what was going on inside her head. After the wedding, that stopped pretty abruptly. If I ask her how her day is, she will only ever tell me that it was fine or super. She doesn't talk to me about her feelings anymore, ever, even when I explicitly ask, "How do you feel about X?" She also stopped telling me about anything important that happened to her. About a year after we got married, her grandfather died. Did she tell me she'd lost her grandfather? No. She told me that she had to go to a conference for work on the other side of the country, which I thought nothing of. On the second day she was gone. Her older brother texted me to tell me that my in-laws had really missed seeing me at the funeral. When I called her to ask why in the ever-loving hell she didn't tell me, and then lied about it, all she would say was, "I didn't want to trouble you. You have a lot on your plate." After that, she went on a couple of spontaneous family trips. She's really close to her family, so the first time she said she was going camping with her brother at their alma mater. I didn't think a lot of it other than to be slightly disappointed and confused that I wasn't invited. Because her brother's cool and the three of us go camping together a lot. But the second time, I started hearing alarm bells. I'd like to say I'm a more secure man, but after the second spontaneous family trip, my wheels started spinning and I started to think that maybe she was cheating. This was a weird insecurity in the back of my mind for a while, since she wasn't showing any other big signs of cheating. She wasn't guarded about her phone and hadn't changed her routine / appearance. A few weeks ago, she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon about it until I asked her how many weeks along she was, and she nonchalantly said about 12 or 13. She'd been pregnant for like 3 months before she even bothered to tell me. She's not really showing at all, and she doesn't usually drink, so I had been completely in the bloody dark. I honestly hadn't even suspected. That was kind of it for me. I was sure she was cheating, and that it wasn't my kid. I thought there was no possible way that a woman would keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband for 3 months. So I snooped. Yes, I know I was wrong, but I wanted proof that she'd been having an affair before I moved out. One of my best buddies from college is a divorce attorney, and when I asked him what I should do, he sent me the info for a key logger. I installed it on my wife's laptop and was prepared for the worst. Now, I feel like what I found is somehow worse than her cheating. I didn't find any steamy messages, but I found out that she keeps a diary in a Word document that she writes in every day. I know I should have just stopped once I knew she wasn't cheating, but once I saw my name in her diary, I couldn't stop. I read all of it. All 7 separate documents, going back to way before we'd even met. Turns out she's not cheating. She's depressed, hates herself, and has absolutely no trust in me. All of the stuff I've been confused and bothered by has some kind of sad, self-loathing explanation. She hates having blonde hair, But she writes, I know he'd divorce me if I went back to being a brunette. Because wives are supposed to be blonde almost every week. The wives are supposed to be thing is tangled up in everything. She thinks wives are supposed to be quiet, which is why she doesn't talk to me anymore. She thinks wives are supposed to make things easier for their husbands, not harder. Which is why she didn't tell me when her grandfather died. It just goes on and on and on. She didn't tell me when she got a huge promotion and a raise because he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he knew I made more money than he does. Men can't handle that. It hurt to know that she thinks of me as some kind of one-dimensional 1950s husband. And I've been racking my brain to think of anything I could have done to make her think this way. What I can't handle is that she'd lied about the big stuff. I honestly don't know if I can forgive her for not telling me about the miscarriages. The spontaneous family trips were actually her miscarrying 2 of our children, one at 5 weeks, the other at about 10. She went and stayed with her parents while she was recuperating, and her brother and sister came to support her. But not me. I didn't get to be there for her, because she thinks I would leave her immediately if I knew that she'd killed our children. She's convinced that she caused both miscarriages because she smoked pot for a long time before we got married. For what it's worth, it sounds like her family tried both times to get her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She finally told me about this pregnancy because her parents threatened to tell me she didn't. I'm just absolutely confused. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just so baffled because everything she says about me in her diary is insanely nice. She goes on for pages and pages about how much she loves me and how she thinks I'm her soulmate and how she would do anything for me. I just can't understand why she thinks that I would leave her. Knowing that she's spent the last 3 years walking on eggshells around me, convinced that I would leave her at the drop of a hat is just so confusing and awful. I feel like our marriage is some kind of lie. The woman I thought was self-confident and ready to take on the world is actually full of self-loathing and really, really depressed. I don't know her at all. She's been suffering silently with depression long before we met. She has no faith in me, no trust. She thinks that every hug and kiss I give her and every "I love you" I say is a lie. I just don't know what to do. She obviously needs serious help, but I don't know how to get it for her. I can't tell her that I read her diary. If she has zero trust in me now, I can't even imagine what she'd think if she knew if I read 6 years worth of her private thoughts. I feel like I need to get my in-laws on board somehow, but I don't know what to say to them. I know I can't ignore this, but I feel like any move is the wrong move. Been with Stephanie for a little over 3 years. More or less relationship is good. She tends to be way overdramatic when we fight, which isn't often. But I can usually talk her down and things work out. When Stephanie and I first started dating, she mentioned a few times in kind of a mysterious, I thought it was attention-seeking. Still do, way that she had some kind of mental illness or mental health struggle. Eventually, probably 2 or 3 months in, she came out and told me in a really serious conversation that she has body dysmorphia and thinks she's obese and hates herself for it. Now let me be clear, I love her the way she is, wouldn't change a thing. I don't mind her weight whatsoever. But even when she said it initially, I almost thought it was a joke. Stephanie is obese. I'm not good at guessing weight and she's never told me her weight, but I know she's 5 feet 4 inches and a size 22 in pants. She's by all standards obese. I don't mind it at all. I'm attracted to her. I think she's beautiful. I would never ask her to change a thing. It didn't come up again for a while, but last fall she took a psychology course for her college degree and they talked about mental illness, and it came back up. She came in one night almost happy, in a weird way, saying that she understands everything that's wrong with her because they talked about BD in class and it all makes sense. She has never been diagnosed by a medical professional and can't see a doctor for lack of health insurance. Ever since then, she talks about it a lot. I'm not one to poke at people just to poke, so I just let it be. But she talks about it all the time. She blames arguments we have on her BD. She uses it as an excuse to eat poorly and not take care of herself. Because she is straight up convinced that she is smaller than she is and that the person she sees in the mirror is a dysmorphic situation. She is part of an online BD support group and talks openly to me about how she's met people who finally understand her. And she gives them advice and guidance based on her struggle with BD. She's pointed to actresses like Mindy Kaling and compared the actress's body to her actual body versus BD body, and says it's nice to see herself represented on screen. No offense intended to my girlfriend, but that's not her body type. She is much bigger than that. I'm getting to the point where I don't know what to do. She uses it as an excuse for all her behavior. I honestly don't know if she truly thinks she has BD or if she just uses it to justify herself. When we first moved in together, she would cover all the sizes on the tags of her clothes with Sharpie so I wouldn't see them. She's since stopped doing that, or only does it when she remembers. But it made me think she might be aware of her size and just tries to pretend she has BD so no one can talk to her about it. I know this is a weird situation. I'd like to get her or us into counseling, but she doesn't have insurance and goes to a community college that doesn't offer student mental health services. I'm not sure what to do.